Who are we when we detach from our own mind?
Very good question. Yes. So at first you were identified with the conceptual mind, the story-making mind, and your sense of identity was the story of me.
My
Uh,
past, my memories, my beliefs, my
that's right.
all these thoughts that are accumulated in the bank of my mind from the past that I've told myself this happened to me, this is what's wrong with me, this is why I'm not good enough, or this person did this, or whatever.
Exactly, exactly.
Uh,
Now, when the awareness arises, your sense of who you are, your sense of identity begins to shift from being lodged in the conceptual mind, the voice in the head. It goes to a deeper place, and you realize who you are in your essence is actually the awareness itself. And that is an amazing realization. Uh, the, in other words, this is a dimension of consciousness that is, I call it, beyond thought. Thinking is a wonderful thing. Thinking is a very powerful tool for creating. However, if thinking is all we have and we look for our identity in the mind, then that is very limiting.
uh,
If thinking is used as a tool, it's very powerful and empowering and can be very creative. But if thinking becomes self-serving, in other words, you're completely identified with this stream of thinking that never, for most people, never stops. All through the day, they're talking to themselves. There's a voice in the head. Sometimes they say I. Sometimes they talk to themselves and you shouldn't have done that. You're
you
not good enough.
idiot. Yeah, all these things.
Uh, so the, this is the most important thing in a person's life, and this is why we're here, is to experience this shift in consciousness, so that increasingly, in glimpses at first, but then increasingly, your sense of who you are is the space of awareness, the presence.
Does that mean there's two of us?
One could say that there is, on the one hand, I sometimes call it, on the one hand, you have your form identity. Your form is both the physical body, which is the first thing people identify with, but really it's not the physical body, it's the mental image of my body, which they
Mhm.
may be happy about, or either the body can be a source of pride, or it can be a source of shame, or anything in between. And so people identify with my body. That's the first form identification. And the next is the psychological form of me, all the things that
Mhm.
I identify with in my past. The past makes up who I think I am, all the past conditioning, starting in childhood, the way by which the culture in which you grow up, the family in which you grow up, all those things become part of your identity. So you have form, I call it form identity on the one hand, and everybody obviously has one. No matter how conscious you are, you continue to have a physical body until you don't. And you have a form identity, a psychological form. But there is a deeper identity also that, and this is spiritual awakening, that is, I call it essence identity, your
Ugh.
essence. And your essence is, if we want to we use the term awareness and we use the term presence. But another term we can use, what that really is consciousness. The essence of who you are is consciousness, the light of consciousness itself. And this is something to be experienced. You cannot understand conceptually what it is that I'm talking about unless you experience in this moment, perhaps, well, it's the only moment there is, unless you experience what that means that you are in essence, you are consciousness, the space or the light of consciousness between two thoughts. For example, sometimes there's a thought that comes to an end, another thought hasn't arisen yet. You have a gap of 5 seconds or 10 seconds, and it's an experiential thing. To realize yourself as consciousness it implies that at first, for very brief instances, the mind becomes still, it subsides. But you are still there. So when you're not, let's say, let's assume that you let go of any memory of your past, because you don't need it right now. You don't remember your past at all, or your name or anything. And you're not thinking about future. In fact, you're not thinking at all, but you are aware. You're aware of your sense perceptions, but you're not interpreting sense perceptions. You're allowing sense perceptions to be. Now, who or what are you when you're not telling yourself who or what you are? Who or what are you without the story? And some people are afraid of that. They're so attached to the story they can't let go. But it's a wonderful practice. For some people, they only let go when the story that they have, that they call their life, becomes so painful that they can't stand it anymore. And then sometimes they experience a breakthrough.
But why do so many people hold on to their pain identity, their past story, for decades sometimes? Why do they hold on to it so long when you might see their friends and family seeing that they're suffering and struggling, but they're unwilling to break free of this old identity or current identity they've been holding on to for so long? Sometimes, like you said, people will finally get so bad, they finally let that identity go. But why does it take an extreme, horrible breakdown or pain for people to finally say, this old story of mine, this old identity doesn't work for me anymore. I want to let it go and step into a new identity. Why is that so challenging for people?
Well, we all inherit, it goes back thousands of years in a collective consciousness or unconscious humanity. We all inherit this kind of dysfunction, a mental, of course, another word for that is the ego. It is the human ego. Ego, sometimes when people use the term ego, they interpret it in different ways. Then there's the ego that's used by Freud, the Freudian ego and other egos. But when I use the term ego, or when it's used in a spiritual context, ego simply means complete identification with your mind, with the thinking, the mental emotional makeup of you. That's ego is complete identification with that. And so that's so deeply ingrained. Every human being inherits that kind of dysfunction.
Wow.
And so it's so hard to let go because it's so deeply ingrained by the conditioning of your mind. And so some people need an enormous amount of suffering. And even with that, some people don't awaken even then. They be unhappy until they die. Or they die even at an early age because the body can't stand the unhappiness anymore. It isn't functioning properly anymore because their mental state interferes with the otherwise harmonious functioning of the body. So they make themselves ill through stress.
Right.
So we are faced with it's an enormous. It's also it's a challenging and wonderful thing to realize that your purpose here, beyond any purpose that you might have on a personal level, which also has a function, but your deeper purpose is to evolve as a conscious being and to go beyond the ego here, so that consciousness evolves. Because you're an expression of universal consciousness, and universal consciousness throughout the universe is awakening. We live in an awakening universe. So gradually, life forms, in our case, the human life form, begins to awaken into a higher level of consciousness.
Yes.
So the essence here is realizing the possibility of living in a different state of consciousness where you're not necessarily always immediately thinking and interpreting things.
And if there's someone watching or listening that is thinking to themselves, you know what, I'm just feeling pain psychologically, kind of off and on consistently, and I haven't been able to figure out how to break free and feel a sense of true harmony internally, true peace. Yes, of course, there's challenges that are going to come our way as human beings, as we continue to grow. But as a baseline, peace and harmony, and they just can't figure out how to get there. What type of application or what do people need to be aware of and then take action on in order to start working towards inner peace and harmony?
Right. Yes, good question. Well, a good entry point is the present moment. That's the present moment is I sometimes call it the portal into that state of consciousness that we call presence or awareness. Now, the egoic mind, as I call it, the egoic mind is not really interested in the present moment, and it usually tries to obscure the present moment. It's interested in some other imagined moment, but not
the past, the future,
past
worry,
and future.
doubt. Yeah.
Yes, it ignores the present moment, but the first realization is the absolute importance of the present moment in your life. It's the foundation for everything. And your relationship to the present moment determines how the future evolves, what we call future, which, by the way, never arrives, because when it arrives, it's again the present moment.
Yes.
So the realization that all you ever have, all that you can ever experience, is intrinsically linked with the present moment. It's inseparable from the present moment. Your entire life unfolds in and as the present moment. That's all there ever is. The past, when the past happened, it was the present moment. It couldn't happen anywhere else. And when you remember the past, you remember it in the present moment.
Right.
The future, when the future comes, when tomorrow comes, it won't be tomorrow anymore. It will be the now. There was a British pub in London I lived in London for many years. They had a sign on the bar that says "Free beer tomorrow." And of course, tomorrow never comes. So the sign is always true.
That's
so
funny.
If you go the next day, say, no, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Wow, that's funny.
Yeah. So tomorrow actually never comes. Of course, we need to make plans on a practical level. The future is indispensable. We need it future for us to get together here to talk, to stipulate day and time for connecting. So on a practical level, we cannot do without future. But on a deeper level, on the deeper psychological level, it's important to realize that the future as such does not actually exist, because all you can ever experience or have is the present moment.
Yes.
So that's the starting point. It begins with the realization of the absolute primary importance of the present moment. This is all you ever have. So you might as well have a good relationship with the present moment, because if your relationship with the present moment is dysfunctional, your entire life is dysfunctional.
Right. So how do we, if someone watching or listening is saying, well, my present is really challenging right now.
Yes.
I've got a lot of debt. I feel I've got some sickness in my body and my health is not there. I'm going through a divorce or breakup. The career is not as good as I want it to be. There's some type of pain in the present.
Yeah.
How can I actually enjoy the present when I'm in breakdown everywhere?
Yeah. Let's leave aside for a moment physical pain. Another story, but the psychological pain that's there is again associated with certain situations. It's associated with your life situation, which may be problematic on some level, whether it's financial or relationship or work situation or living situation. It's very or health situation. It's very likely that at any given time, your life situation will be problematic on at least one of these levels.
Right.
And sometimes it's not one, it's two or three or four becomes really problematical. You lose all your money, you lose your job, your wife leaves you, or you lose your home. These things do sometimes happen.
Yes.
So you have that. And again, that's usually these life challenges, situational challenges, are usually perceived as being part of the present moment, but they're not really the present moment. They are what I call your life situation. But other than your life situation, you have something that I call your life. Life situation exists in time. Life is now, and never not now. And since your life is now, you have to ask yourself, yes, I have all these problems. I don't know how I'm going to pay the rent, maybe, or my relationship is problem. I'm in the middle of divorce proceedings, all these things that happen to people. Or I've just been let go, my company has collapsed or whatever, or it might collapse. Maybe it's doing well, but it may not do well next year. All kinds of things that are perceived as problematic, which sometimes are real and sometimes are just imagination. That again, we need to differentiate between when people say they're having big problems. Sometimes they are just in the mind because they think of things that might go wrong. At other times, they are actually real challenges happening around you.
Right.
But here again is to single out the present moment and not to ignore action that you might take or have to take in order to change certain situations. Is there any action that I can take? That's a secondary question. It's important, but it's secondary. Primary question I often ask people, what problem do you have at this moment? And then they usually start by saying, well, I'm running out of money, or I'm living in this unpleasant this place, whatever. I said, no, running out of money is not this moment, right here and now. What problem do you have here and now, in this moment? And then you look around. Maybe become aware of that you're breathing, and you look around, and then you reluctantly sometimes people have to admit, well, okay, I'm ready to admit that at just this moment, there isn't actually a problem. The next one there might be, but the next one is again this. Of course, at this moment, you may have a challenge that you immediately need to deal with. If you're going for a walk and you encounter a wild animal coming towards you, you don't say, I don't have any problems at this moment. That's a challenge that you need to deal with, but we wouldn't call that a problem. I mean, I sometimes go for walks in the forest, and occasionally there are bears here. So if you encounter a bear, that is not a problem. It's a challenge, and you deal with it. Either you run away or you don't. Whatever you do, you deal with it. The problem lives in the mind. To get out of that is to give much more attention to the present moment and realize that in the present moment, the problem cannot survive.
Say that one more time. In the present moment.
The problem, any problem you have, cannot survive in the present moment. Because problem is a burden that you carry in your mind, your mental emotional field. That's what a problem is. The rest is situations and circumstances. Either you leave them alone if there's nothing you can do, or you take some action. But they're not a problem. Either you act or you don't act. And if you don't act, you take your attention into the present moment and see that it's actually okay. And every life situation is to some extent problematic. There's no life situation that is totally perfect, where everything is going well. No matter how much you practice positive thinking, which is, of course, a wonderful thing to do, nevertheless, there will always be